Under the cold lights of a secret laboratory, a group of scientists stood frozen in disbelief as the results appeared on the glowing screen. The test had been repeated 3 times, each with the same impossible answer. The young man lying unconscious on the steel table was not human. At least, not in the way they understood. His blood, his genes, his very structure carried no resemblance to mankind. The system had searched every known database on Earth, cross-checking with millions of genetic samples, but it had only matched with one record, an ancient fossil buried deep under stone and ice, a fossil believed to be from a mythical creature that should never have existed. A dragon. The scientists whispered to each other, their voices low, as if speaking too loudly might wake something dangerous inside the boy. They had found him days earlier, rescued from a strange wreck discovered in the desert. The craft he was inside was unlike anything known to man, shattered metal that hummed faintly even after its crash. His body bore no wounds, no scars, only a strange mark glowing faintly at his wrist, a mark that no scientist could explain. Yet now, with his DNA exposed, the truth clawed its way to the surface. He was not one of them. He was something else. The lead researcher, Dr. Reynolds, leaned forward, staring at the numbers and codes on the screen. His lips trembled as he spoke. This shouldn't be possible. Dragons are myths. They are stories told to scare children. But his DNA, it links only to the fossil found under the Andes. How can that be? His assistant shook her head, fear plain in her eyes. Are we saying, he's one of them? A living dragon in human form? The thought alone sent a chill across the room. Outside the laboratory's thick glass walls, guards patrolled with weapons ready, but even they had no idea what lay behind the reinforced doors. The boy stirred faintly, his fingers twitching, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed too slow, too controlled, almost as if his body was waiting for something. One of the scientists gasped. On the monitor, the boy's heart rate began to spike, the numbers flashing red, alarms blaring across the room. The mark on his wrist glowed brighter, spreading like fire through his veins, lighting his skin with an otherworldly glow. Dr. Reynolds shouted for restraints, but before anyone could act, the lights in the entire facility flickered. For a moment, darkness consumed the lab, and in that silence, they heard a sound. A low, deep rumble that seemed to come not from his throat, but from somewhere far older, far deeper. It was the sound of something awakening. When the lights snapped back on, the boy's eyes opened. They were not the eyes of a human. They burned faintly gold, like molten metal, sharp and ancient, filled with a weight that no teenager should carry. He looked around slowly, scanning the frightened faces of the scientists. For a moment, no one moved. Then his lips parted, and his voice came out soft but strange, as if layered with another voice beneath it. Where am I? Dr. Reynolds forced himself to step forward, his fear hidden behind a mask of professionalism. You are safe, he lied, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. We are studying you. We found you in a wreck. Do you know who you are? The boy blinked slowly, confusion flashing across his face. I don't remember, he whispered, though even as he spoke, he clutched his head as if images pressed against his mind, fragments of fire, shadows of wings, the roar of something colossal tearing through the skies. His body trembled as if he were fighting against a memory that didn't belong to him. The scientists watched in horrified fascination. The DNA report still glowed on the monitor. Match, 99.8% with fossil code DR01. The world's only recorded dragon fossil, unearthed a decade ago, its skeletal remains dismissed as an evolutionary anomaly. Now, standing before them, was proof that it had never been just bones in the ground. The boy's breath grew heavier, mist curling from his lips even though the room was warm. The lights flickered again, and this time, the hum of the wreckage outside in the desert grew louder, vibrating through the very walls of the facility, responding to him. The guards outside shouted as the metal of the crashed ship glowed faintly, as if alive again. Inside the lab, panic rose. Scientists grabbed their papers, their devices, their data, but no one dared run. They were too terrified to turn their backs on him. Dr. Reynolds raised his voice, desperate to regain control. Listen to me. You are human. You must be. Dragons do not exist. But even he no longer believed his own words. The boy turned his golden eyes toward him, tilting his head slightly, and whispered with an eerie calm, If I am not human, then what am I? The question hung in the air like a blade, cutting through the silence. No one answered, because no one could. Outside, thunder rolled across a cloudless night, and somewhere in the distance, something stirred, as if the earth itself remembered the name of the creature that once ruled it. The boy sat in silence on the cold examination table, his golden eyes fixed on the floor as if he were trying to remember something just out of reach. Around him the laboratory buzzed with tension, scientists speaking in hushed tones while guards tightened their grip on their rifles. Everyone knew they were standing too close to something they did not understand, yet no one dared to step away. Dr. Reynolds kept his gaze steady, studying the strange glow that pulsed faintly beneath the boy's skin. It ran like molten light through his veins, flickering in rhythm with his heartbeat, and the sight of it made even the bravest soldier shift nervously. "He's stable," Reynolds whispered, though the truth was uncertain. Stable was a word meant to calm the others, not himself. The boy finally looked up, his eyes sharp and unsettling, and asked again in a voice that seemed layered with something inhuman, "What am I?" No one answered him, not yet. Instead, they watched, waiting to see if he would reveal more. The boy raised his hand, staring at the glowing mark on his wrist as though it had been there his entire life but only now began to mean something. His fingers trembled, and suddenly the air around him rippled like heat rising from fire. The lights flickered once more, and several screens across the lab shut off, their circuits fried by an invisible surge of energy. Gasps filled the room. The boy pulled his hand back quickly, as if frightened by his own strength. "I didn't mean to," he said, his voice breaking, sounding human now, vulnerable. But his fear only made the room more tense, because if power this strong could be triggered by accident, what might happen if he truly lost control? Outside the lab, reports flooded in from the desert site where his wreck had been found. The strange craft was no longer silent. The metal that had once been shattered and cold now pulsed faintly with light, as though it was slowly coming back to life. Soldiers stationed near it swore they could hear faint echoes, deep roars that shook their bones, though the night was otherwise quiet. Inside the lab, Dr. Reynolds knew the truth. The ship was responding to him. "He's connected to it," one scientist muttered under their breath. "It's not technology we understand. It's alive, it's calling him." The boy's head jerked up at those words. "Calling me," he repeated, the strange lead tone slipping into his voice again. He pressed his palms against his temples as if trying to block something out. His body shook violently, and his eyes glowed brighter, reflecting golden fire that wasn't really there. Suddenly, he gasped, and the lab around him seemed to vanish from his mind. He saw something else. A vision. Endless stars spread out before him. In the distance, wings of light stretched across the cosmos, so vast and magnificent that entire worlds trembled in their shadow. A roar, ancient and powerful, echoed through the vacuum of space, and in that moment he understood, it wasn't his imagination. It was a memory. His memory. He stumbled forward, gripping the edge of the table as his chest heaved. "I've seen it," he whispered, his voice shaking. "A creature so big it filled the sky. I knew it. I felt its wings. I heard its voice calling me." The scientists exchanged horrified looks. This wasn't possible. He had never left Earth, and yet he spoke with certainty of stars and creatures no human had ever witnessed. Dr. Reynolds tried to keep control, tried to make sense of what was happening, but deep inside he felt the same fear as everyone else. The boy was awakening. As the visions faded, the boy looked around the room, his face pale, his breathing uneven. He studied the people watching him with wide eyes, but instead of anger, there was confusion and pain. "Why are you afraid of me?" he asked softly. His question hit them harder than any roar could. None of them wanted to answer, but the silence was enough. They feared him because he was not human. The boy looked down, fists clenched, and for a moment the glow beneath his skin dimmed, leaving him in shadow. But then a sharp alarm broke the silence. A red warning light flashed across the lab, and voices shouted through radios. "Unidentified object in orbit. It's not one of ours." The room erupted in chaos. Guards scrambled, scientists abandoned their data screens, and Dr. Reynolds froze as a chilling thought struck him. The ship in the desert was awake, the boy was changing, and now, something had come looking for him. The boy stood up slowly, his eyes wide as if he could already sense what the others could not. He turned his head toward the ceiling, toward the stars beyond it, and whispered, "They found me." The words filled the room with dread. No one knew who they were, but everyone understood the danger. The guards raised their weapons, pointing them at him as if he were to blame, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he closed his eyes and listened to the sound only he could hear, a distant call that tugged at his blood, at his bones, at the ancient part of him that was no longer hidden. The mark on his wrist flared like fire, and somewhere above Earth, a ship moved closer, drawn by that light. In that moment, every person in the room realized the same truth: this was not just a boy. He was a key, a signal, and the beginning of something far greater than they could control. And as the alarm screamed and soldiers shouted, the boy opened his eyes again, and the golden fire within them promised that the world would never be the same. You said. Far away from the sterile walls of the underground laboratory, another discovery was unfolding. High in the mountains where the first dragon fossil had been unearthed, archaeologists stumbled upon something hidden beneath layers of stone and ice. It was not another bone, nor the fragment of a skull. It was an ancient structure, a ruin older than any known civilization. Strange markings covered its surface, carved deep into black stone that shimmered faintly when touched by light. The symbols twisted in patterns none of the team could read, yet there was a strange familiarity about them, as though they were not meant for human eyes at all. News of the site spread quickly, and within hours the information reached Dr. Reynolds. He read the initial report with growing unease, his eyes flicking between the words on the screen and the boy seated across from him in the observation chamber. The boy had grown quieter since the alarm about the object in orbit, yet there was something restless in his body, as if he felt a pull he could not resist. His golden eyes wandered constantly to the ceiling, to the skies above, as though he was waiting for something to descend. When Reynolds mentioned the discovery in the Andes, the boy's entire posture changed. His head snapped toward the screen, his gaze sharpening as though a hidden memory had been triggered. "Those symbols," he whispered, staring at the projected images. "I know them." The scientists exchanged nervous glances. "How could you?" one of them demanded. "This site is thousands of years old. No human could possibly recognize," the boy interrupted, his voice low but certain. "They are not human symbols." His hand hovered above the image, trembling slightly. They are part of me. I can feel them, like they're inside my blood." His words made the room colder. Dr. Reynolds leaned closer, his voice tight. "What do they mean?" The boy's eyes clouded, as though searching his fractured memories. "It's a message, a door, a reminder." He pressed his palm against his forehead, pained by the fragments racing through his mind. In his head, flashes of fire and stone, wings stretching across starlight, and voices speaking in a language older than Earth thundered against him. He gasped and staggered back, his glowing wrist pressed against his chest. "It's calling me." Outside the laboratory, the situation was escalating. The unidentified object had taken a fixed orbit above the planet. No signals had been received, no attempts at contact, only silence as it drifted in the void. Yet every military sensor showed the same thing: the object was watching, waiting. In the command center, generals debated whether to fire upon it, but none could decide if it was a ship, a weapon, or something else entirely. Meanwhile, inside the boy's mind, the ruins and the ship above felt connected, both threads pulling him toward a truth he could not yet understand. He felt like a puzzle being slowly pieced together, each new discovery awakening something vast within him. That night, as the facility settled into uneasy quiet, the boy lay restless on his bed. Shadows danced along the walls, but in his mind he was far away. He dreamed again of stars, of wings that blotted out suns, of a creature whose scales burned like molten gold. It lowered its head toward him, its eyes ancient and sorrowful, and whispered words he could not understand. When he woke, his heart pounded, his skin slick with sweat. His wrist burned faintly, the glowing mark brighter than ever before. He rose silently, staring at the reinforced door as though he could hear beyond it. The ruins called to him even here, thousands of miles away, pulling like a thread woven into his very DNA. The next day Dr. Reynolds entered the chamber with a grim face. "You're going to the site," he said flatly. The scientists had argued against it, the generals had refused, but in the end none of their protests mattered. The boy was connected, and they needed answers. The helicopter ride over the Andes was turbulent, the air thin and sharp, but the boy barely noticed. As the mountains drew closer, his pulse quickened. He felt as though he had been here before, not in this life, but in another one. The ruins stood in a barren valley, black stone jutting out of the ground like teeth. Armed soldiers surrounded the site, their weapons trained in every direction, but even they shifted uneasily as they stood near the alien carvings. The air itself felt heavy, as though carrying a weight of time and memory that pressed against the lungs. When the boy stepped out of the helicopter, the ruins glowed faintly, lines of light crawling across the symbols like veins awakening. Gasps erupted among the soldiers and scientists, but the boy didn't hear them. His eyes were locked on the stone. He walked forward, each step guided by something he couldn't name. The closer he came, the brighter the ruins burned, until the carvings were blazing with golden fire that mirrored the glow beneath his skin. He reached out his hand, pressing his palm against the cold surface. The stone pulsed beneath his touch, alive, vibrating with ancient power. Images slammed into his mind, dragons soaring between stars, colossal battles in forgotten galaxies, worlds bowing to creatures that were neither gods nor beasts, but rulers of the skies. His breath caught in his throat as one image lingered longer than the others, a dragon falling, its body breaking, its bones scattering into the soil of Earth. He realized with horror what it meant. The fossil was not just a relic. It was a grave. He staggered back, his chest heaving. "I remember," he whispered, his voice shaking. "They were real. They were here. And I am one of them." The words echoed across the valley, chilling everyone who heard them. Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled. Dust rained from the ruins as the carvings flared brighter, sending a beam of golden light into the sky. High above Earth, the silent ship stirred at last. Its engines burned, its weapons hummed, and its course shifted. It had been waiting for this signal, for the awakening of the boy whose blood carried the last memory of dragons. As the beam pierced the heavens, the boy lifted his eyes to the stars, and in his heart he knew the truth. They were coming. And they were coming for him. The signal from the ruins spread across the world like a silent alarm. Satellites caught the beam of golden light, governments scrambled to hide the truth, and the object that had lingered above Earth for days finally moved. It was no longer a drifting shadow in orbit. It was a ship, vast and alive, its surface shifting like scales under the starlight. Slowly, deliberately, it turned toward Earth. In the command centers of powerful nations, generals barked orders, but no amount of strategy could explain what they were seeing. This was not human technology. It was older, stranger, and it was searching for something. Deep inside the ruins, the boy still stood, his hand pressed against the glowing stone. His chest heaved as visions poured through him, memories not his own, yet carved into his blood. He saw stars burning, empires falling, and dragons soaring between galaxies. He felt a hunger, not for food, but for belonging, as though some forgotten voice whispered, "Return to us." When he finally staggered back, the soldiers raised their weapons. Fear shone in their eyes. They had seen the stone react to him, seen the sky itself split with light because of his touch. "Stay where you are," one barked, but his hands trembled. The boy lifted his gaze to the soldiers, his golden eyes glowing brighter now, more dragon than human. "They know I'm here," he said softly. His voice was calm, but the certainty in it made the soldiers flinch. A sharp crack of thunder echoed above the mountains though the skies were clear. The ground vibrated, and some instinct deeper than reason told everyone the same thing: something was coming. Hours later, the night over the Andes tore open. A shadow fell across the valley as the alien ship descended, its colossal frame blotting out the stars. The soldiers shouted, scrambling to position their weapons, but it was hopeless. The ship wasn't landing, it was hunting. A beam of silver light burst from its hull, scanning the ruins, sweeping across stone and soldier alike until it found him. The boy froze as the beam wrapped around him like a tether. His veins burned, his wrist blazed, and inside his head a voice spoke, layered and ancient. "Dragon Heir. You live." He clutched his skull, gasping, the words pounding like thunder through his mind. "Stop." Dr. Reynolds shouted at the ship as though it could hear him. "He's just a boy." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. The boy was not just a boy, and the ship did not see him as human at all. Panic erupted. Soldiers opened fire, bullets and missiles streaking into the night sky, but the ship's scales shimmered and absorbed the attacks like drops of rain. In response, it released drones, sleek machines with wings that sliced the air like blades. They swooped down, weapons glowing, cutting through the valley with terrifying precision. The boy's pulse raced. The world around him dissolved into chaos, shouting soldiers, burning ruins, metal predators circling overhead. And then, in the middle of it all, something inside him broke open. Heat surged through his veins, his skin lit from within, and when a drone lunged toward him, instinct took over. He raised his hand, and a blast of golden fire erupted from his palm, tearing the machine apart in a flash of molten metal. The valley froze in shock. Soldiers stopped firing, drones circled warily, and even the massive ship above seemed to hesitate. The boy stared at his hand, horrified and awed. The flames still flickered around his fingers, refusing to die. "I didn't mean to," he whispered, the same words he had spoken in the lab. But this time, no one believed it was an accident. Dr. Reynolds pushed through the crowd of soldiers, his face pale but determined. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You are more powerful than anything on this planet. But that ship isn't here to save you. It's here to claim you. You must choose, do you fight them or do you go with them?" The boy's chest rose and fell as he looked skyward. The voice still echoed in his mind, promising belonging, promising answers to the questions that tormented him. "You are not human. You are the heir of dragons. Come to us, and you will know the truth." His knees trembled with the weight of the choice. On one side, the humans who feared him, weapons always ready to strike. On the other, the ship that called him kin, but whose power felt dark and suffocating. A drone swooped lower, scanning him again. Soldiers aimed their rifles, ready to shoot, but the boy raised his hand, stopping them. "No," he said firmly. "They want me alive. They won't kill me." The drone paused, its lights flickering, as though confirming his words. Then the ship above shifted, releasing a booming voice that shook the very stones of the valley. "At last, the dragon heir has awakened. Earth is no longer yours, humankind. He belongs to us." The declaration sent waves of fear through every soldier present. For the boy, the words hit like a chain wrapping around his throat. He belonged to them. Not as a person, not as a choice, but as property. His hands curled into fists, flames sparking at his fingertips. "No," he said again, his voice trembling, stronger this time. "I don't belong to anyone." The ship responded with a roar of engines, and more drones poured out, surrounding him in a tightening circle. The soldiers braced for the end, knowing their weapons would do little against this storm. Dr. Reynolds stared at the boy, whispering desperately, "If you don't fight, they'll take you. And if they take you, they'll destroy us all." The boy's pulse thundered in his ears. Fire licked across his arms, his veins glowing brighter, his eyes blazing with golden fury. Above him, the ship loomed closer, like a predator descending on its prey. In that instant, he realized the truth. Whether human or dragon, boy or heir, he was no longer allowed to hide. He had to fight, or be taken. He drew in a deep breath, and when he exhaled, a roar tore from his throat, layered with fire and thunder. The drones faltered, the earth shook, and even the soldiers who had feared him now felt the power of something greater than themselves. In the sky, the ship's engines blazed brighter, answering his challenge. The hunt had begun. The night sky above the Andes burned with light as the boy's roar echoed across the valley. Soldiers fell back, their weapons forgotten, as the golden fire in his veins surged brighter than ever before. The drones circling him hesitated, their movements jerky, as if uncertain whether to attack or kneel. The alien ship hovered like a predator, its massive shadow stretching across the mountains, waiting for him to make a choice. But deep inside, the boy already felt the weight of a revelation pressing down on him. He was not human. Every memory that had haunted him, every dream of fire and wings, was not a fantasy, it was a truth buried inside his blood. The ruins still glowed with the strange symbols, and the light spilling from them wrapped around his body like a crown. Dr. Reynolds stood closest to him, his face pale, but his eyes wide with a strange mix of fear and awe. "You feel it, don't you?" Reynolds whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break whatever fragile control the boy still had. "The truth. They aren't myths. The dragons were real. And you're proof." The boy turned toward him, his golden eyes burning with confusion and sorrow. "I saw them," he admitted. His voice trembled, caught between human fear and something deeper. "I saw entire worlds bow to them. I saw them fly through the stars as if the galaxies themselves were theirs. They were not beasts. They were kings. His hands shook as he spoke, fire licking across his skin before vanishing again. And I saw them fall. Burned. Broken. Their bodies scattered across planets. One of them died here, and its grave became my bloodline. The words hung in the cold air like thunder. The scientists nearby looked horrified, as though history itself had been rewritten before their eyes. One soldier muttered a prayer under his breath, his rifle lowering in defeat. Humanity had always believed dragons were myths, stories from ancient cultures. But if this boy spoke the truth, then those myths were fragments of a memory far older than mankind itself. Above, the alien ship pulsed with light, as though responding to his words. A deep, resonant voice thundered from the sky, the same voice that had whispered inside his mind. You speak truth, heir. The Dragon Empire ruled long before these fragile creatures walked this earth. You are the last of us. Return, and we will restore the throne. The boy flinched at the weight of the voice. It filled him with longing, a desperate need to know who he was. The ship was promising him belonging, power, and a place among something far greater than the small frightened world that now surrounded him. For a fleeting moment, he wanted to surrender. He wanted to go with them, to see the stars, to understand the legacy carved into his bones. But then his gaze fell on the soldiers, terrified, yes, but still fighting to protect their world. He saw Dr. Reynolds, trembling but refusing to look away, and the archaeologists who had spent their lives searching for truth without ever knowing the danger it carried. And he remembered the fear in their eyes every time they looked at him. Even if they begged him to fight for Earth, they would never see him as one of them. He was a weapon, a threat, a stranger. The ship's voice pressed deeper. Your blood carries the fire of gods. These humans fear you because they are beneath you. With us, you will be worshipped, not hunted. Choose, heir. Serve them, or rule with us. The boy's chest rose and fell as he fought against the pull. His body ached with power, begging to be released, and visions of fire swept through his mind. He saw Earth burning beneath wings of gold, oceans boiling, cities falling to ash. He saw himself at the center of it all, no longer human, no longer boy, but a dragon reborn. And for a terrifying heartbeat, he felt how easy it would be to let go. Dr. Reynolds stepped closer, his voice breaking the silence. Listen to me, he said urgently. They don't want you as a king. They want you as a weapon. If you go with them, you'll be their slave. But if you stay, he hesitated, his eyes heavy with the truth. If you stay, Earth may never accept you. But at least here, you have a choice. With them, you don't. The boy's hand shook violently, fire flaring from his fingertips before vanishing again. He stared at Reynolds, at the desperate humanity in his voice, and then lifted his gaze back to the ship. For the first time, he shouted into the sky, his voice raw and defiant. If I am the heir of dragons, then I decide my own fate. I don't belong to you. I don't belong to anyone. The ground trembled with his words, the ruins blazing brighter in response. The alien ship roared in fury, its scales rippling with violent energy. Drones dove toward him, weapons glowing with lethal fire. The soldiers braced for death, but the boy raised his arms, his veins blazing golden, and unleashed a wave of heat that shattered the machines in midair. Metal fragments rained across the valley, and for a moment, silence followed. Then the ship spoke again, its voice venomous. You defy us, heir. Then you are no son of the Empire. You are prey. And Earth will burn with you. The boy's knees buckled under the weight of the words, but he stood tall, fire dancing across his skin. His human heart ached, but his dragon blood roared. He could no longer hide. The galaxy had seen him, and now, both Earth and the stars demanded he choose a side. As the ship powered its weapons, preparing to strike, the boy's gaze hardened. For the first time, there was no fear in his eyes. Only resolve. The fire in his chest spread outward, his body glowing like a living flame, and his voice rang out across the valley. Then come for me. But I will not bow. The alien ship answered with thunder, its cannons lighting up the night. Soldiers screamed, scientists fled, and Dr. Reynolds covered his face. The boy, glowing like a burning star, stood his ground. The battle for his soul, and for Earth, was about to begin. The alien ship's cannons glowed brighter than suns, ready to erase everything in the valley. Soldiers scattered, their shouts drowned out by the rising hum of weapons charging to fire. The ruins blazed with golden light, pulsing in rhythm with the mark on the boy's wrist. He stood at the center of it all, his veins burning, his heart pounding like war drums. The voice inside his head whispered again, this time laced with venom, bow, air. Bow and survive. But he did not bow. Instead, he stepped forward, flames flickering around his body. His human frame trembled under the force of power surging through him, but the dragon inside demanded release. He drew in a deep breath, and the sound that escaped was no longer entirely human. It was a roar, layered and thunderous, shaking the mountains to their core. The alien ship paused, as though stunned by the defiance. Then, with an ear-splitting boom, its cannons fired. The valley exploded with fire. Soldiers dove for cover, stones shattered into dust, and the ground quaked like a wounded beast. But where the boy stood, the flames bent away, curling around him as though recognizing their master. His body glowed golden white, wings of light unfurling from his back, stretching wide against the night sky. Gasps filled the air as humans, soldiers and scientists alike, saw him fully for the first time. He was no longer just a boy. He was something more, something out of legend. The drones swarmed again, countless black shapes cutting across the burning sky. They fired their weapons in unison, beams of deadly energy streaking toward him. The boy raised his arms, and fire erupted outward, a living shield that swallowed their attacks. He roared again, sweeping his wings of light through the air, and the drones disintegrated like paper in a storm. Pieces of molten metal rained down, lighting the valley with sparks. Dr. Reynolds watched in awe, his face pale, his glasses cracked from the shockwaves. "My God," he whispered, voice trembling. "He isn't human, but maybe he isn't monster either." The alien ship adjusted, its massive hull shifting. From its underside, a colossal figure began to descend, a warrior clad in black armor, its body shaped like a humanoid dragon, tall and terrifying. Its eyes glowed red, and in its clawed hand it held a weapon that crackled with plasma fire. The voice that had haunted the boy's dreams now came not from the ship, but from this creature. "You are no heir. You are a failed remnant. I am the chosen. The throne is mine." The boy staggered back, heat radiating from his body. "You're one of them." The creature laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "I am what you should have been. You are weak because you cling to them." It gestured toward the humans cowering among the rocks. "They will betray you. They already fear you. But with me, you could have been a god. Now you will be nothing but ash." The boy's golden eyes narrowed. Fear clawed at his chest, but deeper than fear was anger. Anger at being told what he was, anger at being treated as a weapon, anger at being denied the right to choose his own path. Fire surged from his veins, blazing brighter, hotter. "I am not yours," he said, his voice shaking the valley. "And I am not theirs. I am mine." With a cry, the armored dragon warrior lunged, its blade slicing through the air. The boy met it head-on, flames erupting from his fists as he struck. The clash shook the ruins, sending shockwaves rippling through the earth. Sparks and fire lit the night as they battled, blow for blow, strike for strike, one the embodiment of conquest, the other the embodiment of defiance. Every strike tested him. His arms ached, his body trembled, but the fire inside him refused to die. The warrior's blade cut across his side, but instead of blood, golden light spilled from the wound. The boy roared, driving the enemy back with a torrent of flame. The ruins answered his call, symbols burning, beams of golden energy shooting upward as though the stones themselves were alive. The alien ship shrieked with metallic fury, preparing another blast to annihilate everything, even its own warrior. Dr. Reynolds shouted over the chaos, his voice desperate. "You have to end it now. If that ship fires, the entire world will burn." The boy's heart thundered. He looked at the humans hiding in fear, at Reynolds' trembling but determined face, at the ruins glowing in response to his blood. He realized this was more than his battle. If he lost, Earth would fall, not to fire from within, but to chains from above. Summoning everything within him, he spread his wings of light and launched into the air, colliding with the armored warrior. They spiraled upward, flames and shadows tearing through the sky. The boy roared, unleashing a wave of fire so fierce it pierced the clouds, blinding the ship's sensors. He struck again and again until his hands burned, until the enemy staggered. And in that final moment, he drew on the ruin's power, channeling it through his glowing veins, and let out one last burst of fire that consumed the warrior whole. The black armor cracked, the red eyes dimmed, and the creature fell into ash. Silence followed, broken only by the echo of the boy's ragged breathing. The alien ship wailed, a sound like a dying beast, before pulling back. Its engines flared, and with one final promise of vengeance, "This is not the end, Air," it vanished into the darkness of space. The valley lay in ruins. Soldiers rose slowly, gazing at the boy with fear and awe. Dr. Reynolds stepped forward, his voice shaking. "You saved us." The boy's wings of light folded slowly, fading as exhaustion took him. He looked at his hands, still glowing faintly, and whispered, "I don't know if I saved you, or doomed us all." He sank to his knees, the fire dimming, but the golden mark on his wrist still burned brightly. Above him, the stars seemed closer, watching, waiting. He was no longer just a boy, no longer only human. He was the last heir of dragons, caught between two worlds, hunted by both. And as he lifted his gaze to the heavens, one truth echoed in his heart: this was only the beginning.